I recently conducted a survey of 100 Nissan Leaf owners and asked them several questions, and this is what I found out. So the first question was, what did most people take into consideration when buying an electric vehicle? Well, the petrolhead in me could easily have made an assumption that most people were concerned about the environment. However, this would have been incorrect, as it quite clearly the most popular reason was running costs. Yes, electric vehicles are cheap to run and own, and so 54% of people who ranked this as their first and number one reason for buying an electric car. And I think they would just be justified in doing so. Yeah. The second most popular reason for buying an electric car was an interest in taking up new technology and desire to try new things. Now, this surprised me, as I would have guessed that would have come further down the list. However, on reflection, if you're the sort of person to not have an interest in new technology, you're probably not the sort of person to even consider moving to an electric powered car. So the third most popular reason for buying an electric car is the impact on the environment. I know that many might argue that electric cars will pollute as much as conventional vehicles, and this is something for scientists to argue about, but the biggest difference for me would be that the pollution in the creation of electricity is not in the most populated areas. Now, there are other electric vehicles on the market, but I asked the question, why did people purchase the Nissan Leaf? The primary reason why people selected the Nissan Leaf was because out of the current available electric vehicles, it was the one that suited them the most. I know I ruled out many vehicles because they only had 4 seats, where the Leaf has 5 seats and a good range and the range that met my requirements. The second reason was that the dealer provided them with a great deal, and in some ways that might be stating the obvious, as it's probably the reason why most people buy a car. We would next see that people like the way the car drives and the features the car offers. How the car looks ranked very low on the list. When asked what other cars they reviewed before buying the Nissan Leaf, by far the highest two were quite close in the results, was the Renault Zoe, very closely followed by the BMW i3. Both are smaller 4-seater cars, the Zoe appearing to be a lower equipped and the BMW more costly, with only an advertised 80-mile range. A little further behind these two is the Kia Soul EV and the Tesla Model S. Again, a lower end and a higher end comparison, which could imply that the buyers are selecting Nissan Leafs from both sides, from moving up and moving down in model. We have to consider that available models of electric vehicles are quite limited at this time. The other models that feature in the top 10 include the Volkswagen Golf, the Chevrolet Volt, the Hyundai Ioniq, the Mercedes B-Class, Mitsubishi Outlander and the Nissan ENV 200. They were all considered in that order. I suspect, as we see in the press, that many more manufacturers will start producing more electric vehicles and there'll be more choice. So how the Nissan Leaf will fare against them only time will tell. Now, when asked what year Leaf people owned, 2017 model came out and topped, closely followed by the 2015, then the 2014, in joint second with the 2016 model after that. So 10% of people are driving the 2013 model, and 3% of people are still driving a 2012 model, which would be 5 years old now. The implication is that Leaf have remained popular over the years, with the numbers increasing this year over last. With regards to equipment level, I was surprised to see that the higher spec model Leafs were the most popular, closely followed by the mid-range, and only a handful of drivers having the base model. Equipment levels are pretty good across the whole model range, but the top range does boast heated leather seats, 360-degree cameras, and a Bose sound system. 49% of people were driving the higher spec model, and 45% were driving the mid-range model. Most people have filled out the survey are new owners, 58%, which I guess would make sense, as they probably are the ones most keen to talk about the car. And why wouldn't they? However, there was a good percentage that had owned the car for over a year, 26%, and a small number that still owned the car after 2 years, 16%. I was also very interested to see how many miles a year people did. A car that has a limited range, in theory, would limit the number of miles you do every year. However, the majority of people, 57%, were looking at travelling between 7,500 and 15,000 miles a year. There were 12% of people that were planning on doing more than 15,000 miles a year, like me. When asked how many real world miles you get out of a single charge, everybody got more than 50 miles. Well, I'm sure that was what you would expect. However, 12% got no more than 70 miles on average, and a further 28% would get around 80 miles. 24% getting no more than 100 miles, and 5% getting more than 120 miles. Of course, there is a small issue here that we don't actually know what size battery they had. 44% in the survey had purchased a Leaf in 2016 or 2017, so there's a good chance they could have the larger 30 kilowatt battery. Nissan claims that this will do 150 miles. The older 24 kilowatt battery they claim will do 120 miles, but realistically it would appear that 80 miles is a good range for a 24 kilowatt battery, and possibly 100 miles would be, or even more maybe, for the 30 kilowatt battery. And finally, it's probably no surprise to see that 42% of Nissan Leaf owners are between the age of 35 and 50, with 31% being between 51 and 65, and only 3% are under the age of 25. I hope you found this interesting. I know I did.